Pokimane has reached a strange point in her internet career, where nothing she does is technically new, yet everything she does feels louder than it should. Not louder because of scale, not louder because of stakes, but louder because the silence around her actual content has grown so wide that even the smallest personal moment echoes like a headline. That is the real situation surrounding her right now. Not an accidental clip, not a single viral moment, but a slow transformation from streamer to symbol, from creator to conversation piece. For years, Pokimane occupied a very specific role online. She was positioned as the safe, polished face of Twitch, someone advertisers loved, someone platforms could point to as proof that streaming was clean, mainstream, and respectable. Her brand was friendliness, relatability, and control. Even when controversies popped up, they were usually contained, managed, and quickly smoothed over. But what happens when the content slows down, the projects fade out, and the persona is all that's left? That is where things start to unravel. And that is exactly where she finds herself now. The recent wave of criticism aimed at her is not actually about one comment, one clip, or one business failure. It is about accumulation. People are reacting to a pattern, even if they don't consciously articulate it that way. The cookie company quietly disappearing without explanation was not just a failed business venture. It was a crack in the image of effortless success. When you build a brand on being aspirational, on being the example, any stumble feels disproportionate to the audience watching. The issue was not that the cookies failed. Businesses fail all the time. The issue was that the failure was never addressed, never owned, never contextualized. It simply vanished, and the silence made people feel like they were being treated as disposable observers rather than supporters. That silence became a recurring theme. Instead of transparency, there was vagueness. Instead of accountability, there was distance. Pokimane began framing her life and decisions through broad, emotionally charged statements that felt personal, but revealed very little. Cutting off toxic people, going to therapy, choosing peace, being selective with content. These are all valid experiences, but when presented without specificity, they start to feel performative. They become aesthetic choices rather than genuine communication. Audiences can sense when vulnerability is curated, and once that suspicion sets in, everything else is filtered through it. Her comments about dating and attraction poured gasoline on that slow burn. The claim that the most attractive men she encounters are all gay struck people not because it was offensive or shocking, but because it felt disconnected from reality in a way that exposed a deeper issue. It suggested a worldview where rejection is externalized, where incompatibility is reframed as coincidence, where the possibility that someone simply isn't interested never fully lands. That is not unique to her. Many people do this privately. The difference is that she did it publicly to an audience of millions while occupying a position of extreme privilege. This is where the backlash sharpens. When someone has infinite resources, visibility, and flexibility, people expect a level of self-awareness that matches that advantage. When that self-awareness appears absent, frustration builds. Her statements began sounding less like reflections and more like rationalizations, less like growth and more like insulation. The internet has little patience for perceived entitlement, especially when it is wrapped in soft language. Another major point of tension is her relationship with content itself. For a creator of her size, there is a surprising lack of clarity around what she actually does anymore. Streaming is infrequent, videos are sparse, appearances often happen through collaborations rather than original projects. When she talks about stepping out of the rat race, it clashes with the reality that she is not visibly racing at all. That disconnect creates resentment because many viewers are running full speed just to stay afloat in their own lives. Hearing someone at the finish line talk about burnout without showing the marathon feels hollow. This is compounded by the tone she often adopts. The soft-spoken, carefully modulated voice that once felt comforting now feels artificial to some viewers. Not because it is inherently wrong, but because audiences have seen glimpses of her speaking differently, reacting sharply, defending aggressively. When contrast exists, people begin to interpret the softer tone as strategic rather than natural. Authenticity online is fragile. Once cracked, every expression is questioned. The accomplishment cake moment encapsulated this perfectly. On its own, celebrating personal growth is harmless, but framing vague emotional decisions as major achievements while ignoring very public professional failures came across as self-congratulatory. It felt like rewriting the scoreboard, not losing, just redefining winning. That tactic rarely lands well, especially with an audience that remembers the earlier standards she set for herself. Then there is the broader issue of alignment. Pokimane has often positioned herself as above drama, yet she remains surrounded by it. She claims to avoid conflict, yet her name consistently appears in controversies involving friends, collaborators, and communities. At a certain point, neutrality stops looking like maturity and starts looking like avoidance. Silence can be powerful, but it can also be interpreted as complicity or cowardice depending on context. The longer she avoids addressing criticism directly, the more people fill in the blanks themselves. What makes the situation more complicated is that she is not doing anything overtly malicious. There is no singular act that justifies the intensity of disdain some people show her. Instead, this is a case study in audience disillusionment. People feel like they grew up alongside her, and now they feel talked down to by her. The parasocial contract shifted. She still speaks as if the audience is emotionally invested in her journey, but many of them now feel like spectators being asked to applaud a play they no longer believe in. The more she frames herself as misunderstood, the more detached she seems. The more she emphasizes personal peace, the more insulated she appears from consequence. The internet does not respond well to insulation. It thrives on friction, accountability, and reciprocity. When those disappear, admiration curdles into mockery. Even moments meant to be playful or carefree, like dancing or joking on stream, are now interpreted through a cynical lens. What once would have been ignored or enjoyed is now dissected. Is it bait? Is it insecurity? Is it desperation? This is the downside of long-term visibility. You do not get to reset perception easily. Every action is compared to a past version of yourself that the audience may prefer more than the current one. The tragedy, if there is one, is that this did not have to happen. Transparency could have diffused much of the resentment, owning failures openly, acknowledging privilege honestly, speaking plainly instead of aesthetically. Even stepping away entirely for a while without framing it as growth or self-care content could have allowed the noise to die down. Instead, she remains half present, half absent, which keeps the conversation alive without ever resolving it. At this point, Pokimane is no longer being judged primarily on what she does, but on what she represents. To some, she represents influencer insulation. To others, corporate-friendly, hollow branding. To others, the disconnect between online success and personal fulfillment. None of those are fair burdens for one person to carry, but fairness has never been the internet's concern. The situation is not about exposure in the literal sense. It is about emotional exposure. The gradual revealing of insecurity, control, avoidance, and image management beneath a polished exterior. When that contrast becomes too visible, audiences react not with empathy, but with rejection. They do not like being reminded that the person they supported may not be who they imagined, especially when that person never acknowledges the shift. Whether Pokimane chooses to address this directly or continue drifting through it will determine the next phase of her career. Silence will not make the conversation stop. Vague positivity will not rebuild trust. Only clarity can do that, and clarity requires discomfort. Until then, every small moment will continue to feel bigger than it is. Every clip will feel like confirmation, and every attempt at relatability will land just a little flatter than before.